Rome wasn't built in one day. And with that being said, you talked about how GMs and others look at this. If we were to put on just our GM caps and just take a look, these are the 15 most, according to Hoops Hype, highest salaries that I've shown on the screen. Boston, Phoenix, Cleveland, Denver, and New York round out the expected top 5, which I believe $205 or 204 some change is the triggering of the second apron. Correct me if I'm wrong right there off the top of my head.
Well, let's see. The second apron for this coming season projects to be 207.8.
207.
Yeah, and the first apron 109. Well, we'll call it 196, 195.9. And then the tax is 178, about just under, and the salary cap projects to be about 154.6, so about 155. These are all different steps on the ladder. I like the ladder of spending. So when you go to your list and we say that the second apron is 208, let's just round up. You can see right off the bat you have 3 teams that are over that line, and I have to actually look because I feel like Cleveland projections are complex, so you have to apply a certain deft hand to it. I'm not sure that your projection includes the jump for Evan Mobley, who was he earned Defensive Player of the Year, and that raised his salary to 46.4. So I have them projected against the second apron, also including some incentives. You have to include Okoro's unlikely, Hunter's unlikely. I have them all the way up at 223.
Wow, right next to Boston?
Yeah, so they're way, and that's before Ty Jerome. So
Ty's gone.
That, no, not necessarily. Okoro could be gone to, in trade to keep Ty, right? Like,
yeah,
teams are allowed to make more than one move. I think, when I write a concept, I'll be like, oh, this team gets this player in this fake trade, and someone will say, oh, now they're going to be terrible. It's like, well, they still have like 4 or 5 other moves they can make, right? Like, you can't just define it. So, singularly. So, if you're Cleveland, the heart of who they are, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, and then the acquisition of Jared Allen. And then if you assume Max Strus is part of that core, and then Dean Wade is relatively cheap. So the next guy on that list in terms of making any actual money is Isaac Okoro at 11. So next is Jalen Tyson at 3.5. So even if they got out of 3.5, right? Let's say they traded Jalen Tyson for nothing. That only barely moves the needle. So it's really just the math says to me, either A, they have to break up their core in some fashion. B, they don't care and will just stay above and don't care that they're this high. That's fine. They could stay the team they are. They can keep or not keep Ty Jerome and just pay more tax. They would only have minimums to add talent, but like the Suns didn't have success, but they did add some quality minimums. The Bucks didn't have success. They added some quality minimums. Gary Trent and Taurean Prince were regular rotation guys. So when you look at the Cavs, A, they have to break up their core. B, it doesn't matter. Or C, they can do a little of both, which is not breaking up their core, but getting out of an Okoro to trim it. Okoro only making 11 probably means they can't get all the way under that second apron, but you take step after step, and teams don't mind theoretically living in it for 1 year above the second apron, because the penalties don't really kick in until it's multiple years. That's when you start to get frozen draft picks down the line. Your first round pick gets frozen. You can dip into above the second apron for a year, but teams don't want to be there for any long period of time. So I'm curious to see what this means for the Cavs long term, but they don't have to decide long term today. They can decide how they're going to approach this year, and it may be any of those pathways. I would guess that Okoro is, I don't think he has tremendous value. I don't think he did a lot. He's a solid.
Gatto said repeatedly that the Hornets were like the one team and the Nets were the ones that had interest in sign trading him. So my assumption.
Right, but that was then, right? Did he do enough this year to warrant for them to say, oh, this is a guy who we thought he was? Because a team's projecting most of the time, especially in a young player, that they're going to be X. And if you can get them at a price below what you think X is worth and then develop them to a price above that, right? They're delivering more than you're paying. then you've succeeded, right? That's a very valuable thing in this NBA to get better talent at a lower price. That's basic economics, right? So, but then when he stays with the Cavs, has an okay year, was hurt a bit, then he was okay, and then in the playoffs he didn't perform particularly well. Now the whole team didn't perform particularly well, but if we're looking at recency bias, which probably isn't a great way to build your team, but human beings are guilty of, including general managers and front offices. You might look at Gary Trent and see that, man, look what he did in the playoffs. He had 2 30-something point games, hitting a zillion threes that were insane. Maybe we'll look at that he had an okay season, a good season, not a great season, but we'll look at that and be more attracted to him as a player than maybe we should. With Okoro, maybe the Hornets are looking at him and saying, yeah, like in our environment where he really gets a chance to play and have a bigger role, he'll be more than what he was, and that it's situational why he performed poorly, because he's just not a priority on this team, and the shots he's getting are not his shots, right? That might be a point of view. So Charlotte, you said Brooklyn, these teams could absolutely have interest, but also I can't over rely on good intel from Scotto's great at getting intel, but I would want current intel from Scotto
of course
on it versus but it is important to take those data points because they were existing data points, right? Like we know that from Scotto, so I put that in my, if I read that, I'm going to put that in my notes and just say, okay, keep that in mind. And then if it comes up, the Nets need to get to they need to get to the floor, the minimum team salary this year. Maybe they're paid maybe they take on Jalen Tyson as a young player with talent just to take Okoro. So you're adding a good young player, and then they're helping the Cavs get out of money. And then maybe from a point of view, they're also adding a good still young player in Okoro. So
would then the Cavs, and just to take, not to interrupt you, but to go off, the Cavs, I believe, have a Kogi who is non-guaranteed. I mean, not the Cavs, the Hornets have a Kogi who's non-guaranteed. So if I'm the Cavs, wouldn't you maybe try to get in a deal, let's say, using like a Tyson as a sweetener if you don't want to give up draft capital, to try to get a guy like a Kogi for Okoro, so you can just cut a Kogi's non-guaranteed salary and create a roster spot?
I think you'd rather just trade Okoro and Tyson to the Nets and get a second round pick back, or maybe $110,000 back, meaning that you just shave an immediate $15-ish million off your books, right? So you just cut that completely. Getting a player back like Okoro to cut him, sure, you could go that route as well. But the question is does Okoro have value to other teams as a player on this contract that they might be more willing to give more to Charlotte than, like, here he's a throw-in. He's another here. The Cavs are getting him to cut him. I guess the question then is Okogie's player value that low for Charlotte that they're basically trading him to a team that's just going to cut him, because they could just cut
Okogie,
him. Yeah. Now I think Okogie is probably at 7.8 expiring. Also non-guaranteed. I would say he's more valuable than that. Also, for the Hornets to make that trade, right? So let's say that, and I'd have to check the math. I'd have to go through it. Like, if you are matching Okogie for Okoro, which
you get my thought process on that, though, is that
there's a bug in that for the Hornets to take back Okoro for Okogie, they have to guarantee as much salary of Okogie's salary to be able to return a player back.
Oh.
To get Okogie for Okoro, if you're sending out 7.75 and non-guaranteed salary, it counts as zero outgoing for the Hornets. Now, that's not prohibitive, because they do have assuming they're over the cap, which is my projection, they would have their non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Let me double check where they are against the cap.
So it bites them if they do this trade, basically, because they would have to eat into their exceptions instead of just using cap space or the salary to match that, because it's non-guaranteed, is what you're saying.
Right. Like they could do what you're describing, and I'd have to go through the math to make sure it works. But let's say they can guarantee a Kogi and then get a Koro for him, then that defeats the purpose of what you're saying for Cleveland if you're just cutting him. Or they could do that, but then use their non-taxpayer mid-level exception to take in a.
So it doesn't make sense for either party.
Probably. Well, it might, because using your I wouldn't say that that's a no. Most teams, I don't say most,